Hello, everybody. So I just wanted to make a quick video here. Ever since Godot 4 came out, I have been very, very happy with that. There were a lot of updates. Uh, I regularly teach video game development, and Godot has a much easier learning curve than some of the others. Some of those that in a classroom setting would take half of our class period just to boot up. Godot boots up very, very quickly. And one of a nice feature in Godot 4 is Blender is fully integrated. So we can bring our Blender models in. We don't have to export them and then re-import them into Godot. That's really nice. And I've been looking at different plugins I like. So there's a landscape and a tree plugin. Just one click to generate a landscape, one click to generate a tree that's been around for a while. Then Godot has multi-mesh instances. So if we have one tree, we can turn that into a forest of trees. And this afternoon, we'll create a new project here. I'm going to call it Village. This afternoon, I was playing around with other plugins. There wasn't one built in, but I looked around and found a free plugin that works really, really well to generate buildings super quick. So hence the name Village here. So let's look at these plugins and quickly build a landscape for our game, a scene for our game, in particular a village scene. So jump over to Blender. And we'll create just a new general scene. Godot has cameras, so we don't need a camera from Blender. Godot has lights, so we don't need the light from Blender. And I'm going to use the insert a landscape button, so I don't need the default cube. So just get rid of all that. And under Edit and Preferences, this comes installed on Blender. If you search for landscape, just hit this checkbox. This one's big, so it takes a few seconds to come in. But once that checkbox appears, then under Add and Mesh, you'll have a button to insert landscapes. Brings them in really quickly. I'll zoom in a little, and down here in the lower left, there's a bunch of parameters. We can offset our random noise that's generating it, or up at the very top, we have some presets, like a nice little lake scene. That looks like a good place to put a village around. So I'll select that. I do want to make a slight change to this. We could bring it over in Godot. It would work right now, but I'm going to create one tree and then generate a bunch of trees off that. And I don't want trees generated in the lake. So I want to use the part of the mesh that's out here for the like ground around the lake, but not in the lake. So what I'm going to do is go to, with that mesh selected, there's two of them. So there's the water one, which I guess we could give it names. Looks like that's water. More useful names than what they have. Then here's the ground. So I'll double click over here in the hierarchy on the top right and rename that mesh ground. And with the ground selected in edit mode, there's a whole bunch of ground under here. So if we were to use that to generate our trees, some of the trees would try to generate down here underneath the lake. So I'm going to click in the empty space to deselect it. And if we look at click on like one of the Y or X's, we're looking straight from the side. So we need to select all these down here. But just clicking and dragging like this is only going to select them on one side. So what you want to do is switch to wireframe mode and then click and select meshes underneath that plane that serves as the water. And then when you push P, that separates our mesh. So separate by selection. And that gives us two separate objects for that lake. I'm not going to move it or anything. I'm just going to keep it as two separate things. That way, when we go to generate a forest, we can generate a forest on this top part and not on the part underneath the lake. And it looks like there's some shallow parts, so some trees might generate right at the edge, but that would be perfectly natural. And I'll rename this one as Lake Bed. That way we can tell what's what when we get over to Godot. Godot has shaders and materials. It's probably better to use those. But if you want to use the ones from Blender, if we select that and go over to a new material, the beach ball looking thing, click new material. We can choose a color and stuff, but by default, The materials are kind of set up to go with the really nice shaders in Blender, so it has all of those other features. And some of them do not import to Godot. So generally it's better to click Use Nodes so that we have the simple material, the BMSR material, and then we can just choose a base color. So something for the grassy type of surface. Decide whether it's metallic, specular, grass is probably really rough. And just those 4 properties, it'll bring in a lot better. I'm just going to apply that same material down here. I guess the bottom of the lake would probably be muddy, but we won't really see it from what we're doing. Actually, we could probably even delete it. Deleting it might be good. That way, when your character walks into the lake, they just fall off the world. That would seem very realistic. And on the waters, I'll create a new material. Again, click Use Node so that we only have the simple material. Something blue for the water. Water's going to be pretty metallic and very shiny. Maybe not so much on the roughness. It'll be very smooth. Some blue material. That'll work. Gets us our landscape. So I'll save this. And when I save it, I want to save it over where that Godot project is. So in my documents, I created that village project. And organization goes a long way. Probably don't need it for this video, but I'm going to go ahead and make a folder called Blends. That's what I always call it. And this is our lakeside. Because we're more worried about the ground as far as our character moving around and stuff. So now when we go back over to Godot, it's already importing that. We don't have to export it, adjust settings on the exports, and adjust settings on the imports. It's just ready to go. So we can create a new 3D scene. I'll call this world. And grab that lake, the Blender file, and just drag it right up here. Kind of small though. You might want it bigger. So I'm going to come back over to Blender, and we'll also like the ground first. And then on this orange button that has our transform data, let's scale that up to like 100 by 100 by 100. It comes in as a 2 by 2 by 2, 2 by 2 by 2 plane, modified a little bit from a plane. So moving it up by 100 would be would make that 200 meters in each direction, so about 1/8 of a mile. And the same thing, scale the lake bed and the lake plane up by 100 in each direction. That way it's the same thing, just scaled up. And I found lately I like to scale it up in Blender, and that way when I get over to Godot, which notice it automatically imported that, and when it's done importing, it should automatically update it. And then over here in Godot, the scale, if I click on the transform here with it, is at 1:1:1. So then we don't have to do any fancy math when we get to our scripting and try to figure out how our size relates to that scale value. So set the sizes correctly in Blender, and then when you bring them in, just keep it as a scale of 1. That's usually the easiest way to work with that. That's our ground, so we'll probably want to make that tri-mesh static. First thing I'm going to do is right-click on it and go to Editable Children, because we want to get to all the parts of that model, not just the overall model itself. Clicking on that top level of the model, or actually on the mesh, so this is the one we would walk on. I'm going to click over here and turn that into a tri-mesh static body. That way our physics will apply and we'll walk on it. I don't know if we'll use that much today, so I'm going to turn the collision shape visibility off so it doesn't block view. But now we have a spot where a character can walk around. Kind of a boring spot. Some trees would be nice, so let's jump back over to Blender and make some trees. So I'm going to right click down here in the taskbar and open a new instance. That way I can still get back in and edit the other one if I need to. And again, a general one. And I'll just push A to select everything and delete those. And we want to create a tree. For brevity in this video, I'm just going to create one tree and then turn that and then make a whole bunch of those. But in your actual game, you'd probably want to make several varieties of trees. Maple trees and pine trees and other random trees, fir trees and birch trees, and have some variety of trees to make a forest. But for brevity in the video, I'm just going to make one. And again, we have a plugin built into Blender we can use. So just the default installation of Blender, if you come over to Edit and Preferences, and then on the Add-ons tab, search for Sapling, and just hit that checkbox, and then you will have a button to insert trees. It's under Add, and this time it's under Curve, and there's Sapling Tree Gen. So it brings in the base tree, and down here in the lower left, we have parameters. We have lots of control over the trees, the branch distribution, the rings, the random seed it starts with, just in the shape of it. And down at the bottom is some presets. I'll just go with a maple. The presets come in with standard sizes, so this is typically what we would consider a full-grown maple size. So that's, I'll just go with that shape. And up here at the top where it says geometry, that's overall shape. We could change the radius, the splitting, change how it's pruned. I want to at least turn the leaves on. So if we go to leaves and show leaves, well, that doesn't look like very many leaves for a maple tree. So I'm going to turn that number up. And Blender has these nice sliders where you can click and drag or just type in a number. That's probably too high. So maybe 125. That'll work because they're also really small, and I'm going to make them bigger. So like 0.4. What's that look like? That fills it out pretty nicely. You can play around with the parameters, and once you get the parameters set, just click over here and select the tree. One thing about the tree, though, is remember it was under our Add Curve mesh, so it's not quite going to behave correctly. We can see from the icons over here that leaves are a mesh, so we can go ahead and click the leaves and add a material. New material, this is going to Godot, so we need a simple material to export. Something green, that'll work. Leaves would be very rough, not very specular unless we add a bunch of rain or something. And then click our tree. I usually click down in the trunk, that's an easy spot to hit. And right now it's a curve, so I want to come up to Object, and down at the bottom is Convert, and convert that to a mesh. So now when we import that, it'll behave like our normal objects. And I'll just choose some sort of bark for the color for the bark. Again, click that button so you're not using nodes, so it's not highlighted. And some bark looking color. That looks good. Bark would not be specular at all and would be very rough, so I'm going to adjust those. Not full-blown textures, but just affecting the way the light reflects off of it. That'll work for now. Not just quickly, almost in the presets, and then again in that game project, in that Godot project, I'll save this as a maple. When we save that and go back over to Godot, it'll just import it for us. And once again, we can just drag one up and drop it in our world. Maybe not right in the middle of the lake. And if you push F, that will kind of center the focus, and then we can find a good starting point for it. Way above the ground there. So find a spot where you're like actually in the ground, that'll work. And just like the other one, we need to access the children. So right click and editable children. And we'll add a multi-mesh to create a bunch of trees, but a multi-mesh only works with one mesh. So we do need to go back over to Blender and select both of them. So like select the leaves and then hold Shift and select the trunk and all the branches, or sometimes it's easier to select it over here on the right. And with both of them selected and your cursor in the viewport area, push Control J to go ahead and join those into a single mesh. So, then save it. I forgot that step. Control S to save. And then when we go back over to Godot, it'll re-import and we should see it update automatically. There we go. Now we just have one mesh. So in our world, let me add another child to the world. And this time I want to look for multi-mesh and choose multi-mesh instance 3D. Obviously the options are 2D or 3D, so we want the 3D one. This is going to be our tree mesh. Multi-tree. I'll call it that. Multi_tree is a good name for it. And with that selected, you'll see there's a button over here at the top center of the viewport that says multi-mesh. And if we click that, we get a menu with one option for populating the surface. So first off is, what surface do we want to populate with trees? Click the little ellipsis button, and we want to populate the ground. That's why I split off the stuff that's under the water, because it would just generate trees under the water. Some of them we couldn't see. Some of them might be right at the edge in weird spots. So select the ground. So we'll populate the ground with, so our second box, we want to select that tree. With trees, the y-axis up. Random rotation, sure, let's rotate our trees. Random tilt, for trees, barely move that at all. For grass, you would probably move that quite a bit. And then random scale is some percentage between 0 and 1, so like 0.75. Gives us some variety on the size. And 128 would be a lot of trees, so let's go with maybe 27. And then we hit populate, and that fills our area with trees. Looks like there's one that caught that riverbank. If you don't like the initial setup, you can go back up to multi-mesh, populate surface again. All those settings are the same, and when we hit populate, that will find a different random placement for it. Populate surface, populate, and just keep hit that a few times until you get a setting you like. I'll do it one more time and just go with whatever it is. Populate that. There's one in the water, but that's fine. The rest of them are scattered around pretty nicely. So that's really quick. Those two plugins come built in with Blender to get a landscape and trees, and then we'd probably generate a couple types of trees so that it looks a little more natural than just one type of tree. But the same steps, just one tree for brevity in the video here. But from the name here, see, I called it village. So there's also buildings. And I spent the afternoon today looking at different plugins to generate buildings. There's not a good one built in, but I did find one that I really like that is free and is really, really quick to generate houses and multi-story buildings, and just really quick to get trees, almost as quick as the landscape and the trees here. Sorry, really quick to get buildings as quick as our landscape and our trees here. So let's take a look at that. And like I said, this one's not built into Blender, so we have to go search for it. So if you just go to wherever you normally, the search engine you normally use, and search for Building Tools Blender, or Building Tools in Blender. Right at the top, you'll see the one for the store. If you want to pay for one, there's some really, really nice ones to pay for. I wanted a free one, so the second one here is really nice. This GitHub link for Zirongjian, I guess that's the name there, Zero, Building Tools, with that highlighted on the screen. That I'll put the link right in the description of the video. That's probably easier. I'll put this link in the description of the video. And if you scroll down over here on the right-hand side, you'll see the latest release. So we can just click that latest release and download that zip folder. Building Tools version 1.0.10 at the time of making this video. So now if we go back over to Blender, I'm going to right-click down in the taskbar and open a new instance. Just out of habit, if doing things in Godot and Blender, I found it's useful to have all the Blender files open. So another general file, I'll hit A to select everything and delete those. And this time, we go to Edit and Preferences, and then Add-ons. Instead of searching, since we just downloaded that one, we want to click Install, and just go to Downloads and double-click on the zip folder. You don't have to extract it or anything. Just double-click on that zip folder that was downloaded and hit Install, which I already did on mine. And then you will have those building tools. I I believe after you install it, it's checked by default, but if not, then you can search for building tools and hit the checkbox. And this time our menu is over here. So right next to the little widget that tells it, that indicates what angle we're looking at. We can also click and drag on that to rotate around. But right next to that, you'll see this little bitty arrow. And when your mouse has the two-headed arrow right on top of that, click and drag to the right, and there's a bunch of tools over here. One of those should be building tools once that's installed. So we'll click that, and then we'll just kind of walk through our steps here. So first off is create a floor plan. It's a floor plan, it's flat, so I'm going to click the Z, look down on it from the top. And again, we have parameters down here in the lower left. Different sets. We could do a circular building. I guess make like a tower for a game. Those are popular. Something H-shaped. That would probably scale up into a castle pretty nicely. Or a random one. I'm just going to click random and click through random seeds here till I find one that looks pretty nice. That looks like it'll make a nice house. Have a doorway up here, front door here, back door here. That looks like that'll make a good house. So then once you're happy with the floor plan, just click somewhere else to accept those parameters. And you'll notice we have a bunch of buttons here, but they're all grayed out. So if we click that to select it, I'm going to give it a better name than building one. I'm going to call it house. And click that to select it, and then go over to edit mode. In the top left, go to edit mode. And now those buttons aren't grayed out anymore. So if we say add floors, again, if this is collapsed down in the lower left, you have parameters. So if you wanted like a 5-story building, we'll make it 5 stories tall. I'm just going to do a 1-story house for our example here. A 1-story floor height, I'm going to go a little above 2, so 2.3. It's actually a little less than 2.3. If you're an American, like I am, over here on the right, these tools, this one that has the cone and little circles says scene properties. If we click that, here's your units. So you can change to the imperial units and use feet and inches instead of metric tools. I'm just going to leave it in metric for now. But that's where the button is for that. Okay, now that we got that, most of our selection here applies to faces. So right next to edit mode, here's our select by button. So this first one's select the vertices. So we can select each vertex individually. Then we have edges, so we can select just each individual edges, or the third one, select by faces. And this plugin does apply to faces. So if we click the top here, we'll click the top and hit the add roof button. Looks like it's starting, now it's starting to look a lot more like a house. Maybe here in the front, I'll add a door. We have a nice little door, some parameters for it. Thickness on the frame, all of that stuff. Maybe add an arch to it. Add an arch on top of the door, that'll look nice. Back here somewhere, we'd have a back door and some windows. Let me put some windows in here. So I'll select this face. So select the faces. If you have edge vertex selection, you have to select all the vertices around the face. But select that face and add a window. Like the door, I'll just put an arch around it. Window there, add a window there. I'll add a window there. And some windows in the back. Add a window there. Add a window there. I'll add a door first, that way the door is centered. Don't need a fancy arch on the back door. Then I'll put one window beside it. And maybe make that window beside the back door a little smaller. So we have the parameters. We can just kind of adjust it. Maybe I'll put another one about the same size here. There we go. So we got a bunch of windows and doors. That's a good start. And probably want to see out the side. Oh, I'll scale that back up to 1 and 1. Make those the same as the others. I'll leave the windows off that side. Like maybe this is the south side, so we want some sunlight coming in. And that quick we can get a house. maybe some steps out front. So I'm going to select the foundation down here and add stairs. Well, that's a little too tall. So over here, there's a step count. We do 1. That looks like it lines up with the foundation nicely. That'll work. So it gets us a start of a house, and now we just throw some materials on here, which again, Godot has materials, so we can use those. But you can see that quick, we got a nice start to a house going. So I'm going to go over here. The icon looks like a beach ball to me, so the little beach ball icon. Click a new material. Click off use nodes because we're going to Godot, so Godot can work with simple materials. I'll choose something kind of yellowish, like a stucco. So not metallic, not very specular, but very rough. That'll work, except it covered everything. So to get individual materials, we can go in edit mode. We go back in edit mode, then we can select just an individual face, like the door here. And a little plus sign to make a new material, which would probably be better named, but I'm going to skip naming. Just double put the name in this box right here. Switch to a simple one, choose a brown color for the door, and then hit the button here that says assign. Now we have a brown door. Go around here, click the assign that as a brown door. There's something else I was going to do. I'll do that last. Shingles. This doesn't look like a color of a roof. If we have yellow stucco, we'd probably have like maybe black shingles. So I'll click a new material. Unhighlight use nodes. Come way down here. Shingles aren't going to reflect light and be very rough. And then we hit assign, and that'll assign a material to that. I'm going to select all these roof panels. If you push W a couple times, that will change your selection tool here. This is one of the settings I like. I think the freeform selection tool is easiest. So when you have the little lasso one, you can drag around this odd shape here and make sure all the roof tiles and only roof tiles are highlighted, then hit assign. So we got shingles. Oh, missed one. Assign shingle there. Oh. Select the shingle material and assign it. Starting to look a little bit better. This foundation would probably be gray like concrete, right? So I'm going to come over here, create a new light gray material. New material, unhighlight use nodes, make it sort of a light gray. So that'll probably work. And assign that. And this is where I really like the freeform selection tool. Because now, if you come in here, you can almost like draw a line and select just those. Assign that. Come around here, and I use it almost just like draw a straight line. And everything it touches will be selected. So when there's a lot of them to select like that, that's what I think is the easiest way to select a bunch at once. And then grab all these bottom parts, hold shift to do multiple selections. So our porch here would probably be concrete. And once you get all those selected, just assign that material. That railing would be wood like the door, so I'm going to try to find a good angle where I can select on it. Then we saw earlier to select, if we just did this, we only get the ones we can see. So if we select the wire frame, then we can click around and it will select all the stuff behind the one. It will select through the ones we can see. So something like that. Hold Control and click to unselect if you get extra faces like I did here. Or maybe I'll just go ahead and assign that brown material. Go back to regular view. And, looks like I missed a couple, so I'll select those. Put the brown material in. that and that. The brown material and assign that. Oh, the light was reflecting off of it. It was brown. And then I'll select those and move that back to the concrete material. So just doing selections. Watch out for the light reflection. So sometimes it'll look a little different. You saw there. For the windows, I'll just do like a light blue. Oh, past 30 minutes. I was trying to keep this under 30 minutes. I'm thinking it'll be about 3 more minutes. So just something light blue. Maybe metallic and very specular so it looks shiny. The window's not going to be very rough. Then we'll assign that. Select the face, that material, and assign it. And then I'll just highlight a whole bunch of the windows. Click assign. Oh, select the material and then hit assign. Same thing over here on the back. I'll select the first one, then hold shift and select a lot more of those window panes. Select the material and assign that glass material to it. And then these last two. And I'm going to stop there. We would probably want to do the window trim and stuff, but no new knowledge there. Then we get a nice little door. One thing that can also be useful, this is going in a game, so our character might go in there. So we might need our door to open. So in edit mode, if we select that face and then push P, we can separate by selection, like we saw at the beginning of the video for the landscape. So now we have a door object separate from the house, maybe the back door as well. Click on that, hit P, separate by selection, and then this is back door. So then we can animate things like the door opening. We can do little animations and stuff, but very quickly, we got a little house going that we can use. And then use a multi-mesh to generate a bunch of those houses to look like a village. So I'll save that. Again, in the Godot project, call it house. Save that. And when we go back over to Godot, it'll bring that in. So depending on your village, you might want to just drag in a whole bunch of houses and then position them wherever you think would be a good size place. So other than those landscapes, our sizes are accurate here. So if you do a typical height of a human, normal height of a human, that door will be the correct size as you go into it, as well the steps, the windows at the right height. Let's move that down a little bit so that it's in the ground. The foundation is entirely touching the ground. That'll work. And we have our house, a starting one. These people would probably want their main view facing the lake, though. There we go. And then we can do a multi-mesh just like we did before. Come up to world, a new multi-mesh instance, which is still pulled up here. I'll call it house, multi-house. Depending on your game, you might not want to randomly generate the houses. Again, right-click on the house and editable children so we can get to all of the meshes. So, yeah, I guess in this case, it might not be good to have the doors there included, or we could just leave the doors open. I just wanted to point out that that the letter P separates those. So I'm going to turn them back into a single one. If I select all three of them, select all three of them with the house last, then Control J and object view joins them. Because the multi-mesh instance will only work with that. Whoops. I meant to call that multi-house, not multi-mouse. And again, we'll populate the surface of our multi-mesh. We want to populate the ground surrounding the lake with houses. Sure, rotate them. I'm going to turn that way up. They'll face all different directions. We don't want our houses tilting. I'm going to leave them all the same size, and maybe 15 houses would be good for a village. So I'll populate that, and we got a bunch of houses scattered all over the place. A couple of them in the lake. That would be a problem. So Where we separated that, it might have been better to separate like from the top a little bit around the lake. That way we stay back a little. I'll just hit populate a couple times, see if we can get better placement. That one's almost in the lake, but a little bit better there. Hit populate, just kind of randomly putting them there. You can keep trying that or dragging a bunch of them. I don't see any in the lake. Oh, wait, maybe this one. Yeah, that one's still in the lake. If I hit populate a couple more times. Well, it looks like I'm going to have one in the lake no matter what. But where we separate the ground might work better for that. There's little adjustments you can make so that they don't randomly generate in the lake. Looks like I'm going to keep getting that if I try. But in general, you can see we very quickly, using tools in Blender, that looks better. It's only one and it's at the very edge. We can very quickly get a landscape and trees and houses built with plugins in Blender to build the scene for our game. Everything's sized correctly. Oh, that house is a problem. But little refinements can make a big difference. Kind of like instead of using a multi-mesh for the buildings, drag a whole bunch of buildings in and just place them. Depending on your needs, I just wanted to kind of show off the plugins there. And this has been a 36-minute video, which is 6 minutes longer than the upper limit I had when I knew it was going to be a long video. I hope you found that helpful, because now we can just bring our character in and start doing stuff in this little village. And it makes it really easy to get a nice landscape going in Blender here. So I hope you found that helpful. I will include the link to the building tools plugin in the description of the video, and the landscape and sapling tree generator are installed in Blender. So thank you for watching.